Now we're all here, you can help me paint this garage wall. And the reason I'm painting this garage wall is because the other day I was round a friend's house and I watched the BBC News for 20 minutes, and I haven't watched mainstream news in well over a decade, so I haven't been exposed to the propaganda in the same way most people get exposed to it. And I realised watching this paint dry would have been far more interesting, so I'm giving it a go just to balance up the two. So, but joking aside, there's a serious problem we have here, and that is the actual government itself. Because let's have a look at the candidates on offer, and we've got the Conservatives, the Labour, and now Reform. But the Conservatives are only Conservative in name only, and they've been that way for a good 20 years, or even longer, to be honest. And if you look at their policies and Labour policies, well, you'll be lucky to get a fag paper between them. You need a feeler gauge to even get the right spark distance. They're that close. And you've got Reform coming along, pointing out all the problems with them too. And there's such a yearning for change that I think Reform will do very well. But the underlying problem is that if we look back in time, because I've had a look at my statistics on YouTube, and I've noticed my audience is of a certain age, and they will remember the comedy Yes Minister. And Yes Minister was an extremely funny comedy, and I remember listening to a high-up politician at the time said the reason it's so funny is because it's so close to the truth you cannot tell the difference. Well, that was back then, 40 odd years ago, even more. So what's it like now? It would be politicians don't make any decisions but on steroids. And I realised that government itself, if we look at the etymology of the words, the govern means to govern, and meant is mind, so it's to govern your mind. And they're using the BBC programming, so they're governing your mind through the BBC programming. I'm sure much of the people watching this already know that, but if you don't know that, it's time to realise that their only function is to spend money, and they use that term spending like it's their money they're spending. Just change that word when you hear it to allocate. They're allocating money, then you realise the money is alleged to be the taxes they collect. Well, they're collecting income tax for one, and it takes about 2/3 of the money they collect to collect it. So they're clearly not using income tax as a way of collecting money. They're using that as a way of stealing your energy, because it is actually an unlawful tax that was introduced to help fund wars. And this is why I'm against income tax, and it may be the winning vote could be to abolish income tax, as it's unlawful and it's even in the Magna Carta. So get rid of income tax. That's step one we need to do. And people say, how are they going to pay for this? How are they going to pay for that? Well, put it this way, if you put 1 penny on a litre of diesel, you'd cover everything they collected in income tax. It's that small of amount in comparison to everything else we do. But the amount of jobs it provides, the amount of energy it takes into doing tax returns, the effort you have to put into putting that right, that is why it is so important they keep income tax as a tax, because it soaks up people's energies. And that's really what this world's all about, because as Shakespeare said, the whole world's a stage and without a rake. So they collect up all this money, then they allocate it out to what they perceive it needs to be. So what is the money they're using? Now this is where it gets interesting, because I tell you for why. Recently I come in to a lot of money, and I was going through the children's toy cupboard, and I was very lucky to find a large sum of cash. In fact, there's loads of it. I really don't know what I'm going to spend it on. But what I might spend it on is a new car. But when I went to buy one, they said this isn't real money. And I thought to myself, I wonder what they mean. So I asked them, and they said it was not legal tender. They wanted this stuff. I've only got one of these, by the way. So what is real money? Because this is in a game of Monopoly, this is in a game of life. What's the difference? Well, this game, we move the counters around the Monopoly board, and when the game comes to an end, we finish. This game, we are the counters on the board. So whether you're the ship, the car, the dog, my sister was always the dog, whatever it is that's going round, you are actually playing the part in somebody else's game. You're not moving your own counter. You can do, but it's very difficult to do because these are like paper shackles around your wrists. The enslavement is so overwhelming that it's all encompassing. And I remember when I think it was Tony Blair stepped up apologising for slavery 200 years ago, for that's a kind of strange thing to apologise for, isn't it? Then I realised it was to hide the fact that we're still enslaved now, but it's a different type of enslavement. It's an enslavement to a rich man's trick. Now the rich man's trick has been going a very long time. In fact, the banknote itself come about in 1833 from what I can remember, and it pretty much stayed the same until the First World War. And just before the First World War, I think it was 1913, you could not exchange one of these for precious metals anymore, as in gold and silver. You needed to, you needed to use it to buy it from a broker. You couldn't go into the bank and exchange it. Then as we went into the First World War, something happened of real interest, and that is the Chancellor at the time, or I think he was the Chancellor, a guy by the name of Bradbury, he come up with the Bradbury pound, and he used that to fund the war, and everyone accepted it. There was no problem with the Bradbury pound until Mr. Rothschild noticed, hey, what are you doing making your own money? We're the ones who are meant to be profiting from this war and all this human sacrifice, not you. So jolly well stop using that Bradbury pound right now, or you'll face the consequences, whatever that may have been at the time. So the Bradbury pound was short-lived, but was accepted because it was believed in, whereas this is not. This is just for a game. But you see the point I make. And the other thing I did know was when we was looking at cash back in the 80s, it was said that 3% of all the money in the world was cash. Well, I think you'd be lucky to get 0.3% is cash now, easily. And I'm at the position now where I can't see a way forward. When we look at the choices on offer, it's not a choice at all. And that's why I said maybe spoiling our ballot paper is the way forward. And it's upsetting a lot of people who think that the politicians they can vote for can actually change things. Well, if somebody could explain to me how they can change things within the current system, I'm all ears and I'm ready to listen. But I don't see how. It's a closed shop. They've got it down. It's over. We've got to accept that the way we are controlled is so complete that there's no way out of it unless we withdraw our consent. And I read a comment where someone said the proper way to spoil your paper is I do not consent. And I thought, yeah, maybe on an esoteric level he's right, because when you're writing on that piece of paper I do not consent, you are spelling that out. So there's a spell being cast, and just like when they write stuff hidden within these notes, they're casting their spell upon us. Maybe writing on that ballot paper I do not consent is us spelling our spellcraft back to them. That's a way of looking at it. Now, the thing is with cash, it does open up things like black markets, but the only reason black markets are bad in the eyes of the government is because they don't get to profit out of it, do they? And people start trading outside their systems. That's why you haven't got to worry about getting rid of cash, because they will never let it happen, because they, although it's fake, it's still their fake money. So it's like someone who comes up to me the other day and offers me 8 legs of venison for 150 quid. I thought that was too dear. Joking aside, it's time we realised the sham, and it's time our voice joined to change everything. So that is why I've decided to do these videos, just to see what volume of people out there feel this way. And I really would like you to write in the comments what you think, because there will be a comment out there which will make the difference, and it'll be such a simple idea that we just didn't see the wood for the trees. And I think that's the way we can make a difference, by communication, spreading these videos as far and wide as we can, to know that maybe the fourth option of spoiling our ballot paper as a declaration of not consenting and spellcrafting our ideas, the way we feel about things back to them, they might have to do something about it. because they don't have a choice. So when the people in charge, like the Rothschilds, see us saying to the king, we need your help here, and everyone's telling me the king hasn't got no powers to do that, and it's like, no, but the Rothschilds can't afford to let the king be seen to have no powers to do anything about it. So they're being a sticky wicket when all the masses of people recognise who's really pulling the strings, and we need to use the system against itself. So this is why we behave lawfully and legally and move on. Now, I don't claim to know everything. I'm just an idiot who figured out a few things. I'm relying on the internet and all the minds. What do they call it? The collective, the hive mind. That's it, the hive mind of the internet, to come together and figure out a solution to the problem we face. Because if you can't get a fag paper between Conservative and Labour, and you can't get a feeder gauge between any of the other policies, and all that's happening is you've got one politician calling the other politician names, we're just going to go round in circles for years and years and years. The system that needs to change is the actual government itself, and I believe that together, if we stand and make a noise, we can do that. But step one is writing I don't consent on the ballot paper. I was originally believing it didn't matter what you wrote on the ballot paper, because your spoiled ballot paper is a spoiled ballot paper. But when I thought about the esoteric knowledge of spelling and spellcraft and doing to them what they do to us, I thought, yes, that's what we need to do. I do not consent. And maybe we need to add to I do not consent with something outside, because we're not specifying what we're not consenting to. So maybe I do not consent. And I know when I was looking into common law years and years ago, they were saying about putting squares round the ends of your statement and full stops in it, because you can add to that at a later date. If someone brings your statement up in question, you can add to it. So maybe incorporating something like that, so a common law specialist out there could watch this video and say, actually, yeah, that could work. I do not consent, plus that, then we can add to that, or maybe specify what we do not consent to, and whether you all believe that proportional representation is the way forward. Well, maybe that's you don't consent to the first past the post. These are just ideas, throwing them out there, see what sticks, and we'll go from there. But interesting. So please put in the comments your ideas and any way forward that you can see, and we'll go from there, eh? So I'm going to finish painting this, and hopefully everything goes well. I'll see you in the next video.